Hey guys, here's a quick tutorial on the lab we're doing in class tonight, February 24th. So if you head over to Moodle and go down to the date, February 24th, here's the lab. In this exercise, we'll be exploring color and effects in InDesign. We'll build this file on the lab color effects InDesign yourname.indd file. Open that file in InDesign and save as so you can replace your name with your actual name. So I've provided you with an InDesign file down here. Right under the assignment are all the assets. So go ahead and download these. And to download, you can just click on everyone and it will download into your downloads folder. Looks like I have some image assets, some fonts, and the InDesign file. So let's go ahead and open up that InDesign file. It's the INDD file. Remember last week I was telling you about the IDML file? That's the file if you're working on an older version of InDesign or a newer version of InDesign, that's the one you'd open up. But let's go ahead and open up the InDesign file. And it should open right up for you. And the reason I provided this file for you is because I've preloaded a bunch of gradient swatches. So when you're working in your swatches panel and your colors in InDesign, the little hamburger menu in the top right hand corner, there's a flyout menu and there is one that says new gradient swatch. So that's how you create gradient swatches. Here it is. There's a little slider at the bottom of this interface window, this new gradient swatch window. And if you double click on the colors down here in this little slider, you can change the color of your gradient. You can also add other colors. If you just click below the slider, you can create some pretty cool gradients. So that's how we create a gradient swatch in InDesign. So really the point of this lab is to kind of look at the images in the lab, and we're just going to copy. We're going to make these images together tonight in lab. So the first image you'll see is a cool guy standing there, and GQ, the style issue, is our first one we're going to replicate. And you can see I provided all the original images down here. So let's go ahead and find him and place him into our InDesign file. And we go to Command D for drop in an image. And then it helps to view these as icons so you can kind of see up here in the top of the place window in most of your InDesign windows. You can find how to list. You can show your assets as icons, lists, columns. So if we choose icon, it makes it pretty easy to see that guy. So click on him and click open. And we're going to have, let's see, 1, 2, 3, we're going to have 4 images across the top of this page. So let's just drag him out, about that big. And we can always resize later. So there's our guy, and we know that that is an image inside of this window. Remember, you can right click fitting fill frame proportionately. So what we're going to do, looking at our lab over here, he has like a cool gradient effect going on behind him. So to get that effect, all we have to do is select his image window and head over to our swatches and find that gradient that's behind him. And really you can use any gradient behind him. I think it might be gradient swatch 17. I'm going to grab that one. And if you look up here in the fill and stroke in your swatches panel, you can see now that we've filled his window with a gradient, but we can't see it. So we need to alter the opacity of this image to be able to see it. So if we double click, if we just click on this window and we go up to our transparency slider, and try to make it lower, it'll make the entire window transparent. We don't want that. We want the image inside the window to become slightly transparent so we can see the color that's sitting inside the window. So to do that, let's double click and be sure you have the image selected. See, if you move it out of the way, you're able to see the gradient behind. And then we can go ahead and adjust our slider. So then we can crank it down a little, looks like about 53. And then, yeah, that's starting to look like our example. In our example, we have that window stroked with a black stroke. So let's head over and to the stroke panel and go ahead and make sure our stroke is set to black. And then we can crank up the stroke around our cool GQ model. That looks about right. Alright, let's pop that type in there. I believe that's Futura, the big G and Q. So let's grab our text tool and click and drag out a big text box and type a capital GQ. And let's use our text styling control panel up at the top to make it really big. Remember, you can double click and just type in a size. I'm going to go for 144. And then I'm going to head over and see if I can find Futura. You can also just type it in. Futura bold. There it is. Well, it looks like that's pretty close to what we're using. Looks like it has to be even bigger. And let's use our kerning or tracking, and let's squish those letters together. And let's pop them over on top of our image to see how our placement is looking. Looks like mine are too big. Those letters also have different effects applied to them that I can see now. One is red color and one is a transparent white. So let's hold our Option key down and drag out a copy. And then we can keep these letters in separate text boxes so we can style them differently and overlap them as needed. I was just looking if there was a bolder feature because our sample looks a lot bolder, but I don't see one. So let's go ahead and highlight the G and head over to Swatches. And I don't see the color over there, so I'm going to go ahead and create a color. If I hit this plus button and then I double click, I can start adjusting the colors and pick one that looks about right. It's probably the color of his shirt, which I keep telling you guys to sample colors, and then I didn't do it. But in your swatch option panel, right under the swatch name, there's a little box that says name with color value. That's always a smart thing to check so you can kind of see your CMYK values right there. And I'm going to make mine about like that and click OK. It's a little bright, but it looks pretty good. And I know my Q is filled with white, but it's also transparent. So I'm going to highlight the Q, select the Q with your selection tool, and then head up to the contextual menu and just crank the slider down. Yeah, that looks pretty good. Then I'm going to slide it over on top of the G. And then I'm going to use that alignment tool. I'm going to be sure my Q text frame is selected. And then I'm going to hold down my Shift key and grab the G text frame. Then I'm going to head up to these alignment buttons at the top and be sure Align Top Edges is clicked so that they're lining up nicely and perfectly, because you know alignment is an important factor in our design world. All right, it's looking good. We have the style issue type running vertically along the side of this ad. So let's go ahead and create another text frame and type in all caps, the style issue. Let's select all that and make it quite a lot larger. And that looks like a Helvetica font to me. So let's go ahead and make it Helvetica. And remember the drop down underneath to make it the different weights. Helvetica bold. How about Helvetica condensed black? That looks about right to me. Let's be sure our kerning is always on optical. It's just InDesign helping us get the right kerning on our letters. Remember too, you can squish them a little bit harder together or farther apart. And looking at our example, we know that this type is filled with none and has a white stroke on it. So let's go ahead and do that in our swatches panel. Remember to click the T at the top. And I filled it with white, but I want it stroked with white. So I'm going to use this little arced arrow at the top of the fill and stroke squares at the top of this swatches panel. If I click that, it'll just automatically switch for me. Now you can hover over a corner of your text frame with your selection tool, and holding your shift key down, you can go ahead and make that vertical. There are also some rotate tools at the top of your contextual menu, so you can hit one of those as well. And then let's drag that into position and see how we're doing. Looks a little too big, so I'm going to head back over to my type tool, and I'm going to make it smaller. And it also looks like it's spread apart so the letters aren't overlapping. A little smaller. In this contextual menu, you also have options for condensing the type more or extending it, making it fatter. It's best just to try to find the condensed font, but if you need to, you can always adjust slightly the width of your type with those controls. What do they call that actually? Horizontal scale. Yes, that's what it is. I love these hover over tooltips so you can see exactly what you're doing. Okay, I'm thinking that looks pretty good. I'm gonna go ahead and select this white type, and it looks like it's also transparent. So let's crank that down and make it also transparent. Remember, we're just practicing in the labs and getting a sense of what you can do and getting you prepared to do the assignment, which will be due next Monday. Cool. So we have one of our images complete. We have 3 more to do, and you're going to do it just the same way I did the first one. Put the image in, and then use the effects and the color gradients and the type styling tools to pretty much copy exactly as closely as you can the lab example. So remember, if you don't forget Command Z. If you hold down your Option key and your Shift key, you should be able to get 4 exactly the same size image boxes. And if you do that, and like me, you've discovered, uh-oh, they are not all going to fit on this page. Instead of redoing it all, let's just play with the scale of these images. So you can hit Command A on your keyboard, which is for all, and it selects everything, it selects all. Or you can always click outside of your page, click and drag over everything to select all, And then we can go up to Object, Transform, Scale. And we can enter a value in and hit the preview button. And we can kind of see what a good scale might be so that these will fit nicely on our page. It's getting close. So I'm going to do 90. And that is pretty great. So these 3 images are all ready for you. You might want to select all of them, and let's use our Align tool again up at the top, and let's try Distribute Horizontal Centers, and that way you can be sure that they are exactly the same distance apart, because we're super anal like that as designers. We want them to be exactly the same apart. Then you can go to your next image window and hit Command D and find the next image. And she doesn't have a stroke on her, so we're going to take that all the way up. We're going to be sure she's fitting in the frame. We're going to fill that background of her with a pink to yellow. So you are going to play around with these settings. And do your best to match the samples in the lab. I wonder what this font is right there. Must be Couture. If you have problems with the fonts, please be advised you can choose similar fonts, because really this is just practicing to get you ready for the next steps in the assignment. So you'll continue along, and next person. Remember, you're working with your opacity sliders. And your image window. So remember, you're filling your windows with colors, and then you're adjusting the images on top. This one's kind of interesting because we've applied a gradient feather to the image. We filled it with a gradient. See if we can figure out which one it was. Looks like yellow to maybe a dark pink. Maybe it's that same one. So there's the gradient, but it is going pink to yellow at the top. So we can spin around our image window. And then we can copy our image and we can paste into our window. And then if we select the image, let's go up to Object, Effects, Gradient Feather. Be sure you click your preview button on, and we can change the feather. And that one's going to need some work because it's not matching. You can go ahead and alter these swatches. Remember, we can highlight a swatch and hit the plus button, and it gives us a copy of it, and then we can go in and start playing with color, and if you hit preview, you'll be able to see it taking effect. And if you double click those, you can change the intensity and position of them. And just playing with the effects, you can do some cool stuff. On the last one, we've added a vector shape and the Old Navy logo. So if you grab your vector drawing tool to the ellipse tool, you can grab, or you can click and drag out that shape, and you can sample a color from that image with your eyedropper tool, and then you can click and drag out the text box on top of it and type in all caps Old Navy and style that text to match. The other part of this assignment is I want you to go ahead and just copy that lab example as closely as possible. So you will drag in your original images and label them as original images down here. Remember, you can click on them all at once if you want to load your cursor up, or you can just grab them one at a time. So you'll make all these original images the same size. And then the last part of this is a PMS and Process Color little assignment. If you check your lab example, you'll see a little thing in the bottom right hand corner about PMS and Process Colors. And most brands have a dominant color. Coca-Cola has the color red, Old Navy has the color blue. You pick a brand that you think has a dominant color, and then you're going to come out to the World Wide Web and type in Coke Red Pantone color. Pantone is a universal color system for designers and illustrators. It's called PMS, Pantone Matching System. And it's just a way for us all to be sure that the brand color is consistent across all applications. So whoever the designer or illustrator is working on a brand, that brand's going to have a Pantone color that you will be able to find and see. So if you check out Coke, Coke has a PMS color of 484. If you click into it, you should be able to find the RGB and the CMYK colors. Right here is where they are. Remember, RGB is red, green, blue. That's what we use for digital art. CMYK are the printing colors. That's what we use for printing. So I want you to find two brands and head out and do some research, find out what the colors are, and go ahead and put those in the bottom right hand side of your lab assignment. Then you're going to save it and turn it in on today's date. See you guys later.